Dinner was so quiet you could hear the knife touch the plate. No arguing, no warning signs, just the two of us sitting across from each other under the warm, dim light, while Aaron set his napkin down like he was about to sign a contract. He looked up. His eyes weren't angry, just tight. "It's either me," he said, each word steady, "or your job." I didn't look at him long. I didn't need to think. "All right," I said. "I choose my job." I lifted my fork and kept eating, like he had only asked if I wanted more salt. No sigh, no pause to swallow any sadness, just me and my dinner, while Aaron straightened his back, his face draining of color. I knew he didn't expect the answer to come that fast. He tilted his head a little, like he wanted to make sure he'd heard me right. "Beth, I'm being serious," he pressed. I nodded once. "I know." He waited for another reaction, an explanation, some sign that I was hurt, but I didn't give him anything. The silence got to him faster than any argument ever could. "I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? This isn't a joke," he said, his voice sharper. I kept eating. "I get it well enough." In that moment, I saw clearly what he didn't say out loud. Aaron thought an ultimatum was a push, not the end of his leverage. He thought I'd hesitate, soften, ask for time. He was used to my patience, used to the way I stayed quiet to keep the peace. He thought an ultimatum would make me step back, but the table stayed quiet, and I stayed steady. If you want to understand why I didn't even waver, we have to go back a few months, when everything still looked fine, at least the way married couples tend to look from the outside. I'm a quiet person. I don't like noise, and I'm not the type to brag about anything. I work with a kind of steady, quiet energy. Consistent, solid, nothing flashy. People say I'm reserved, but that never bothered me. It gives me space to think. And Aaron, he seemed gentle on the surface, but there was always something rigid under that softness. The kind of man whose helpful feedback always sounded caring, but hit a tiny needle in every word. "You should wrap up earlier. If you work too much, you'll lose your balance. Are you sure that role isn't too much for you?" Each line was light, but light in the way a hand rests on your shoulder while quietly steering you where it wants you to go. Our marriage was calm on the outside. No loud fights, no storms. In just small cracks that were easy to mistake as normal if you didn't look closely. Like how Aaron would change our appointments without asking me. Like how he got tense when I came home late, even though he never said it outright. Like the look he had whenever someone mentioned my achievements, something that wasn't exactly pride. I didn't argue, didn't justify, didn't explain. I watched, and I got clearer every day. Some people think silence means weakness. Aaron did too. He was used to the version of me from the early years of our marriage. Easy, uncomplicated, low maintenance. He didn't realize my silence had turned into something different a long time ago. Back at the table, Aaron kept looking at me like the whole room had tilted a little and he hadn't found his balance yet. "You really choose your job?" he asked again. Oh, quieter this time. I set my fork down and wiped my mouth with the napkin. "I already answered. Beth, you can't just—" What part of that was hard to understand? I looked at him for the first time all dinner. My eyes weren't sharp, just direct, clear, and steady. He went silent. I saw the confusion flash across his face before he swallowed it down. Aaron always believed he had control of the situation. But tonight's ultimatum wasn't the kind of move he was used to. It was a double-edged blade, and the moment it left his mouth, it landed squarely in my hands. I stood up, gathered my plate, and carried it to the sink. I didn't look back at him, didn't ask if he was okay. I wasn't going to sue the decision he chose to make. In the reflection of the kitchen window, I saw him still sitting in the exact same posture, his hands clasped together. Maybe for the first time, he realized an ultimatum doesn't work on someone who isn't afraid of losing the person giving it. I turned on the faucet, The water ran steady, cold, quiet. I choose my job, I said to myself, and what he didn't understand, what he would have to learn in the days ahead, was that it was the one choice I would never regret. I shut off the water and let the last drops fall into the sink before I walked away. No rush, no need to look triumphant, just me, acting exactly as I am, calm, direct, and firm in my decision. And from that moment, things began to shift. The moment Aaron looked up and realized I wasn't the kind of woman who could be moved by an ultimatum. After that night, the air in the house changed completely. Not in a heavy or explosive way, but in the way Aaron kept watching me, as if he was trying to figure out whether I truly understood what I'd chosen. I didn't bring it up again. I didn't revisit it. I didn't break it down. I left it where it belonged, in his memory, not mine. In the days that followed, I lived as usual, worked, came home, cooked, went to bed on time. My silence made Aaron restless. He thought I'd reopen the topic, check in, ask for time to think. When none of that happened, he started to fidget, the kind of unease you see in someone who's thrown a punch and can't tell if it landed. On Tuesday morning, as I was getting ready to leave for work, Aaron stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. We're not going to talk about it anymore? I think you already said your part, I replied, fastening my coat. I mean, you're actually serious. I looked at him for a second, then walked out. No confirmation, no denial. That little bit of ambiguity bothered him more than anything. Aaron started getting more subtle. In the evenings, he'd ask about my schedule with the kind of detail you'd hear in an interview. What time's your meeting tomorrow? When will you be home? Do you need me to prep anything? The words were gentle, but the message underneath was clear. He wanted to track me, to measure how stable I was after the ultimatum. The next night, I came home later than usual because the meeting ran long. Aaron was already sitting on the couch. I thought you were supposed to prioritize family, he said. His words edged with a hint of sarcasm. I set my bag down, calm. I'm here, aren't I? The answer was so simple it caught in his throat. He waited for me to explain, but I didn't give him that. Over the next few days, he changed the way he asked things. More probing. Are you still serious about this marriage? I tilted my head, my voice even. Are you asking to understand or to control? He went silent. My question was too sharp, and he knew it was accurate. I could see him losing confidence as he faced my calm. What he wanted from me was guilt, but I wasn't giving that either. Every small attempt at control he made, I noted mentally, like little reminders I didn't need to write down. I didn't let his discomfort affect my rhythm. In fact, I started picking up speed. I took on more projects, the kind I knew would put me on the radar of upper management. I spent more hours in meetings, met more people, joined working sessions I used to hand off to others because of family schedules. Not to prove anything. Just because I wanted to, and I didn't need permission. When I brought my laptop upstairs to my office more often, Aaron watched with a mix of suspicion and strange hope. He thought I was trying to wrap things up before making the right decision, according to his ultimatum. That idea made him feel better, and I could hear it in the way he talked. If you're trying to finish things before, I get it. Big decisions are hard, he said one night while I was jotting notes. I only answered, you're guessing way too much. That line made him step back. Not because I snapped, but because there wasn't a shred of emotion in my voice. With each passing day, my quiet unsettled him more. He no longer knew what I was thinking, and that uncertainty shook him. Aaron was used to people who reacted clearly. Anger that showed, sadness that softened into silence. I wasn't either of those. I let him watch. Let him see that I no longer revolved around him the way I used to. But I didn't change my attitude at all. Not colder, not more distant. Just normal in a way he could no longer predict. On one weekend evening, I sat in my small office with my laptop. The screen light spilled across my hands, and the rest of the house stayed quiet. I could feel the calm of the room, a clear kind of calm, not the kind that comes after a fight or harsh words. I heard Aaron walk down the hallway and stop for a moment outside the door. He didn't call my name. He just stood there, maybe waiting to see if I'd turn to look at him. I didn't. I typed a few more lines, eyes fixed on the screen, not avoiding him, not challenging him, just doing my work, and he no longer had the authority to step into the middle of it. In that brief moment, I saw it clearly. His ultimatum had stripped away the very power he meant to use with it. I didn't need a strong reaction. I just needed to keep moving in my own direction. I sat up straight and closed my laptop halfway. In my mind, one sentence surfaced, sharp but not angry. He wanted me to choose, and I'm doing exactly that, in a way he never saw coming. I stood, turned off the light, and let the dark of the house settle into the room. No door slam, no raised voices, just the steadiness I'd built over years, something Aaron no longer knew how to handle. The calm of my late-night work slowly became the thing that kept him quiet. He stopped asking questions, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. He was waiting for the moment I'd reconsider, waiting for some sign that I wanted to fix what he believed had cracked after his ultimatum. He didn't know my silence wasn't pointing toward him at all. One afternoon, I set a small card on the kitchen table. Aaron had just come home from work, took off his coat, and saw it before I said a word. He picked it up and read the company print. Internal event. Employees and one guest. I simply said, I need to bring someone with me. No explanation, no purpose, no hint of emotion. Aaron looked at me longer than usual. In his eyes, a flicker of relief showed before he could hide it. You want me to go with you? The card requires it. A reply that didn't leave room for interpretation, though he still filled it with whatever he wanted to believe. I saw his posture loosen a little, as if the invitation was a sign I was returning to the family image he hoped for. That belief lowered his guard, and I let it happen without correcting him. On the day of the event, the weather was cold enough to fog the car windows. Aaron and I walked in together, but our steps didn't fall into sync. He walked close, and I kept my own pace, just a few inches apart, but that distance forced him to adjust to me. The lobby was wide, lights reflecting off dark suits and muted dresses. Soft greetings floated around us, glasses gently touching to add to the background hum. I walked in like someone who already knew this environment, while Aaron glanced around with a measuring look, the kind of look a man uses when he wants to hold a higher position but isn't sure where he actually stands. When we sat down, he tilted his head and asked, This event is more formal than I thought. Yeah, I said, it matters. I didn't explain what matters meant. Aaron nodded, thinking he understood. I saw his confidence return. He believed his presence here was something I needed to maintain an image in front of my coworkers, as if I still relied on his shadow. The event opened with thank yous and summaries. I sat upright, eyes on the stage, but I could hear every breath Aaron took beside me. He was calm, the kind of a calm someone has when he thinks everything is under control. The CEO walked out. His voice was steady and clear, giving the room a clean pause before the real announcements. Today, we recognize the employees who made the most outstanding impact this quarter and in the company's new direction. I saw Aaron's hand tighten slightly on his thigh. When the first name was called, he leaned toward me and whispered, You must be happy to be here for the last time like this. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The CEO moved to the next category, his voice slower. And now, the new senior position, the role that will lead a key part of our next phase. The room held its breath for half a beat. The person selected is... A moment so brief it almost didn't exist, but long enough for me to hear Aaron's breath stop. Beth Carter. I stood. The chair slid back a little. Aaron didn't move. I could feel the shock coming off him like a cold draft at my back, not because he doubted my ability, but because he thought I'd chosen family in the way he wanted. He thought I'd been tying up loose ends so I could leave this place. He thought his ultimatum had swayed me. His plan cracked wide open with one announced name. I walked to the stage. Handshakes, lights, steady applause around me, and underneath it all, a single quiet spot in the room. The man who tried to force a choice on me now having to witness the real one. The CEO handed me the certificate. When I accepted it, he smiled and glanced toward the audience. Your family must be very proud. He paused, then asked, Do they support you? The entire room looked at me. I turned slightly, letting my eyes find Aaron. He sat up straight, shoulders tight, and his mouth slightly open as if he was waiting for something that didn't belong to him. I spoke in a steady, clear voice, calm enough that anyone listening would think I'd prepared this line long ago. My husband is the one who pushed me to choose what's best for my career. A few people smiled. A couple of heads nodded in approval. The room shifted its attention to Aaron, looking at him the way people look at a modern, progressive man who supports his wife's success. He didn't move. In that moment, I saw clearly how he was trapped in a role he never meant to play. He couldn't react. He couldn't correct the narrative. He couldn't say that's not true without exposing his own ultimatum. One sentence, and every exit closed on him. When the ceremony ended, I stepped off the stage. Coworkers shook my hand, their congratulations forming a steady stream. I returned each one with a small, clean, polite smile. Aaron stood to the side trying to look composed, but his hands were clenched too tight. When it was just the two of us in a small pocket of space among people heading out, I looked at him. My eyes were cool, neither blaming nor soft, just the truth standing upright. You wanted me to choose, I said quietly. This is my choice, and you'll have to live with it. I turned before he could respond, leaving him in the hall, looking like a man being praised for something he never actually did. When the hall doors closed behind us, Aaron quickened his pace to catch up. He tried to speak, his voice low, as if he were soothing a wound he didn't know how to name. Beth, what happened earlier? I didn't know that. I kept my eyes forward, not letting him touch my emotions. It's fine, I said, my tone flat. You don't need to explain. The words weren't sharp, but they cut off every direction he could have taken. Aaron wanted to regain control, to drag the conversation back to familiar ground, where he talked more than I did, and I softened to keep the peace. But tonight, every sentence he tried ran up against the new image the company had placed on him, the husband who supported his wife's promotion. He couldn't peel it off in front of me without exposing himself. Back home, Aaron tried again. I was just surprised. I thought you'd say something else on stage. I only said the truth you gave me, I replied. You told me to choose. Aaron stood still. I caught a small flicker of helplessness in his eyes before he forced it down. He wasn't used to losing ground. He and the awkwardness in him said more than any excuse ever could. From that day on, the house shifted, but not in the way people imagine when a marriage is in trouble. No fights, no Cold War, just boundaries I set light, but not up for negotiation. I stopped telling Aaron about my work. When he asked, I gave short answers. When he guessed, I didn't correct him. When he wanted to know my schedule, I told him just enough so he couldn't accuse me of silence, but not enough for him to step in. You have a meeting this afternoon? Yeah. What time? Depends. Not cold with anger. Cold in the sense that I no longer felt obligated to share. I didn't ask permission for anything anymore either. Do you need me home early? I just looked at him. If there's something you want to do, go do it. That answer sounded light, but Aaron heard it clearly. I no longer rearranged my life around him. The control he once assumed was natural was now gone, leaving a gap he didn't know how to fill. In the first few days, Aaron tried to adapt by performing the role of the supportive husband, the role the ceremony had accidentally handed him. He told his friends, "She's doing great. I'm really proud of her." People nodded. He smiled. But after each conversation, he came home with eyes mixed with envy and confusion. Because he didn't feel proud. He felt himself slipping from the pillar he tried to hold on to with all those gentle suggestions. He felt pushed off the track he thought we were both walking together. What he never realized was that I'd never been on that track. I'd only let him believe I was. Every night, I worked for a while in my office. No announcement, no explanation. Aaron would pass by, his eyes lingering at the doorway as if waiting for me to look up. But I didn't. My calm became a mirror for his growing unease. One evening, Aaron stood in the kitchen doorway while I was washing a glass. "Beth, are you punishing me?" The question slipped out like a confession he never meant to say. I turned. The light hit my face in a way that made every line look colder than I expected. "No," I said, steady. "I'm just giving you the choice you wanted me to make." Aaron opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He wasn't good at facing a bare truth, especially one he created. He'd spent years setting the rules. Now that I was doing exactly what he asked, just not in the way he wanted, he didn't know how to handle it. He stepped back. A tiny movement, jar, but enough for me to see the boundary clearly. I wasn't fighting him. I just wasn't living by his definition of me anymore. In the days that followed, Aaron got quieter. He kept performing the role of the proud husband because that role was now stuck to his face in the eyes of my coworkers. He couldn't drop it without exposing the truth of the ultimatum. As for me, I didn't leave him. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't threaten anything. I lived calmly in the same house, letting him stay with the consequences of what he put on the table that night. That was the thing he was never prepared to face. I didn't leave. I wasn't afraid of losing him. And when one person stops being afraid of loss, the other person's power dissolves on its own. That night, I walked into my office, and the light from the computer screen washed over my hands as I set my documents down. Aaron stood in the hallway, not speaking, not stepping in, as if there was an invisible line he was no longer allowed to cross. I closed the door, slowly, without a sound. The click of the latch was so soft it could have disappeared into the air. But I knew Aaron heard it, and I knew he understood. That quiet wasn't the empty space between two people. It was my new power, cool, steady, needing no noise. A few weeks after the ceremony, my life settled fully into the new role. More work, bigger responsibilities, but everything fit together naturally, like I'd belonged in that position for a long time. I didn't brag. I didn't talk about it. I just did the work. And the silence around it made the success even sharper. At work, new coworkers sometimes asked about Aaron. They'd smile and mention him with a kind of admiration. "Your husband's amazing, so supportive." I just gave a small smile, neither confirming nor denying. Aaron's image now lived in their hands, not his. He'd become the model example of a man who supports his wife's career, an image he had to maintain, because the moment he broke it, he'd embarrass himself in public. I saw it clearly every time he went out and came home again. There was always a slight dimming in his eyes, a small shadow of someone who played a role well but never wanted the part. Aaron was unraveling from the inside, not in an obvious dramatic way, but through quiet erosion. His pride was wounded. You could see it in the way he paused behind the door, taking one deep breath before walking into the house, and in the way he talked to his friends about my wife's unexpected promotion, each word he said reminding him that he no longer held the position he once believed was his. The truth was he couldn't share his discomfort with anyone. If he told the real story that he once gave me an ultimatum, that he wanted me to quit, that he never supported me, he would shatter the very image he'd been forced to carry since the ceremony. And he knew that after admitting that, no one would ever see him as a mature man again. He was trapped in his own silence. And I stayed still, no demands, no pressure, no cornering. I simply let him see what he'd never noticed before. When someone stops being afraid of losing you, your power falls away on its own. In this house, I kept just the right amount of distance. Not far, not cold with resentment. And just a new boundary clear, calm, needing no explanation. I didn't end the marriage. That was never my goal. I lived exactly as I had before, with one difference. Aaron no longer had influence over any decision I made. If I stayed late for a meeting, I didn't report it. If I had lunch with coworkers, I didn't mention it. If I changed my work schedule, I didn't explain, not to hurt him, just because I no longer saw it as something I owed him. Aaron tried to find his old footing, but every time he asked a probing question, I answered with a steady, short, emotionless line. Have you been really busy lately? Enough. Should I reorganize our plans? Up to you. I wasn't cutting him off, but I wasn't leaving him any small gaps to slip back into control either. That distance pushed Aaron deeper into his own thoughts. And in the rare moments when I caught his eyes, I saw something he never would have admitted before. He was afraid of losing his power, not losing me. One evening, just as I closed my laptop, Aaron stood in the doorway of my office. The hallway light cast his shadow long across the floor. His voice wasn't steady, but it wasn't tense anymore either. If I hadn't given you that ultimatum, would things be different? I looked at him. No avoiding, no softening. In that moment, the man in front of me wasn't the Aaron who used to slip sharp little knives into gentle advice. He was just someone who had finally understood the real impact of his actions, and understood it too late. I spoke slowly, clearly. No. The only difference is that now you know exactly where you stand in this story. Aaron didn't answer. He couldn't. Because I wasn't blaming him, wasn't mocking him, wasn't exposing him. I was just telling the truth. And the truth is sometimes the heaviest thing a person has to hold. He stayed there for a few more seconds, then turned away, his tall frame seeming smaller in a way no light could hide. When everything settled, I realized my strength was never in leaving. It was in staying steady, no crying, no pleading, no running from this marriage, living in it, as a whole, grown, self-directed person. And Aaron had no choice but to see me differently. He saw I was stronger than he thought, clearer than he thought, and freer than he ever wanted. My form of revenge was never about hurting him. It was letting him witness himself shrink inside the choice he created. The next morning, I stepped outside. The air was cool, the breeze light enough to push my hair to one side. I locked the door and slipped the key into my pocket. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I walked straight to the car, steps firm, nothing tugging at me. Another workday waited, just like any other. But this time, I entered it with a calm even greater than on the day of my promotion. Right before opening the car door, I thought, not smiling, not colder than necessary. He told me to choose, and I chose in a way he never saw coming. In the end, what I learned was this. Real power doesn't come from winning an argument. It comes from standing firm in your own life. When you stop being afraid of losing someone, that's when you're truly free. That's the end of the story. Thank you for listening all the way through. If you've ever been in a situation like Beth, what would you choose? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. Your support is what keeps this channel going and growing. I truly appreciate it.